future. Man at arms, get down. Scars on my hands and arms, hit town. Niggas know that man is arms.
The War is Crime website, and this article caught my eye. ObamaCare, the biggest depopulation event in U.S. history, by Dave Hodges, The Common Sense Show. 125 views at the time that I found it. It was published July 17th, yesterday, 2013. I have 13,000 subscribers, and I'm under attack. They're not allowing my subscribers to receive notices of my new videos, and many of my subscribers are telling me so. So Dave's article here has only 125 views. If 400 or 500 of my viewers get a chance to hear this, I can triple that number. This kind of information has to get out. The people need to know the truth. This ObamaCare program cares about your health the way the Patriot Act cares about patriotism. They couldn't care less. The people should never have allowed the government to pass this law, granting so much power into the hands of people who are up to no good. 70% of the public did not want this bill passed. Congress signed it without even reading it. Not one person in Congress read it. It was 2,700 pages, and it was passed without reading it. If that's what Congress is doing to us, what we need to do to Congress is fire them. This article will give you one very good reason to secede from the Union. All 50 states say we quit. The federal government is fired. All the federal agencies are canceled. Congress is over. The senators and anything but representatives can come home to their states and get a real job. And forget about those lavish expense accounts and all those lobbyists who want to make you rich. Just come home and get a real job. Try working for a living, especially in this economy that you guys created, because it really sucks. On January 1st, 2014, ObamaCare takes effect, and the death curve among certain populations is going to skyrocket over the next several years. The coming healthcare cataclysm has been deliberately planned with you as their intended victim. Those are strong words, Dave. You're going to wind up on the red list if you're not already there. First to be executed, and I hope I'm right next to you, buddy, because I'm with you all the way. You have the guts to tell the people the truth, and I have the guts to read your articles. And ever since I started reading your articles, Dave, the drones are flying around like flies around cow poop. Next paragraph. At the time of this writing, the U.S. sits on the edge of the biggest depopulation event in U.S. history. No, I'm not talking about the rollout of martial law, mass incarceration into detention centers under the NDAA, nor am I speaking about the commencement of World War III, and I'm going to add, which this foolish president is trying desperately to start. And if Romney had won, he would be following orders just like Obama. Next sentence. The biggest threat, I think he's missing the word for. The biggest threat for the largest amount of Americans comes in the form of a Trojan horse. What should be helping Americans to thrive and prosper into old age is already beginning to be used as a weapon of mass destruction against the American people. Well, Dave, you know, if they kill us, they don't have to pay us our Social Security that we paid into for 45 years. Confiscated from our checks with a gun to our head. Land of the free. Land of the thief is more like it. Home of the brave. Home of the slave. Next paragraph. A small taste of what's coming. Soon after government-appointed stooges, such as the Director of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, will be making all of our important health care decisions. Well, isn't that just what you people want? The government making decisions for you? Transfer all of your power to decide to them. No, I think we should have local laws that have precedent over state laws, and state laws having precedent over federal laws, and this transfers all the power back to the people, and the local people decide who we go to war with and when and under what circumstances, because this unnecessary war in Iraq would have ended a long time ago, and they would have no chance of implementing any Obama healthcare program, which is really a license to kill. Now back to Dave's article. So the government's going to be making all of your important healthcare decisions. It might behoove us to ask what kind of person and professional is Kathleen Sebelius. since she will soon have the complete power of life and death over every American citizen. Does that sound like too much power into the hands of too few? We always have to work against that. We have to move in the opposite direction. Break up the power. Every time they concentrate it into one Kathleen Sebelius, we need to protest. And secession is the best way to protest because it fires Kathleen Sebelius, it fires Obama, and it fires everybody who voted without reading the bill. That's most of Congress. And they all have their lame excuses for voting for this, and every one of them is a lie because they were bribed. Look at their retirement program. Is that bribery or what? And who pays for it? Them? No, we do. They have huge salaries and expense accounts that are 20 times their salary. And who has to pay for their health care? We do. Do they get the same health care that we get? No. They get much better health care than we get, and they don't pay anything for it. They put all of that on us, like we can handle more burden. We must break up the power and get the power back to the states and back to the counties and back to the local governments. That's the best direction for America. To better examine the fine character of Sebelius, let's look at a healthcare case of a 10-year-old girl. This is very sad, so get your tissue paper ready. Sarah Murnaghan, who is dying of cystic fibrosis. Sebelius gives America a preview of what lies ahead for many of us. 10-year-old Sarah needs an adolescent lung transplant, and this is her only chance of survival. However, Sarah is prohibited from being on the transplant list because the qualifying age to be on the list is 12 years of age. Several doctors have proclaimed that if she were to be put on the list, she would survive. Dave, you need to proofread these articles. You missed the word "to" there. Clean up your act, Dave. Kathleen Sebelius has the authority to issue a waiver and permit Sarah to be added to the list. Sebelius has the power of life over death, over young Sarah's life, and she said no. And what has become a one-person death panel for Sarah? Well, if the government wasn't robbing our paychecks and stealing everything we had, we might have advanced medicine. We might have a lot of cures. But the government is the biggest enemy you have. And you know who their enemy is? Public enemy number one is the public in the eyes of these Nazis. Dave doesn't call them Nazis, but he comes really close. Even former U.S. Attorney and current Congressman from Pennsylvania, Patrick Meehan, has said that Sebelius has the authority to grant the exemption. Yet Sebelius has issued other such exemptions. It seems that Sarah is just not the right 10-year-old. Of course, healthcare exemptions are made every day for friends and supporters of the president. This really fries my grease. I can't stand the idea that Obama is any better than us. He doesn't even have a birth certificate that's believable. And here he is, spending all of our money, running up the national debt, killing Americans who haven't even been charged with a crime, who have been denied due process of law, and now we hear that 10-year-old Sarah does not get a lung transplant and friends of Obama do. However, Sarah just does not carry enough political weight to sway Sebelius. Well, this is way too much power in the hands of one person. The health care bill is way too much power to put into the hands of a corrupt and evil government. Dave writes, America, Kathleen Sebelius is the woman who will be making many administrative decisions about the future of your health care. I think that 70% already knew that, Dave, when they were opposed to this bill, and today, now that it's law, 85% of us are against it, and as soon as it goes into practice, 100% of the people will be against this. Secession is the solution. It fires the federal government, cancels all federal laws, and puts an end to the Patriot Act and this health care bill and NDAA. It puts an end to the DHS and the TSA, and we can then fly again without being touched in our genital regions. Humiliating us, breaking us down for mind control, preparing us for ultimate slavery. And then Dave writes, I think that most of us agree that Sebelius' handling of this transplant case does not inspire confidence, but wait, it gets worse, far worse. You are a marked person. You have an assassin that has the proverbial bullet which displays your name. How many of you have ever heard of the IPAB? I'd be willing to bet that 99% of the country will never have heard, should be of, not to, the IPAB. It stands for Independent Payment Advisory Board. Well, that sounds like a concentration of power into the hands of a panel that decides your life, and they're going to be behind the demise of many Americans in the near future. Well, I'll tell you, when they have control of all the doctors, no doctor will talk, because if he does, he'll lose his job. Nobody in the morgue will talk, because they will lose their job and possibly their life. The media will never go over to the morgue or talk to the doctors to get the story because they're under threat of an IRS audit. We need to get rid of the IRS and get rid of this totalitarian government and the controls that they are putting into place. These are all deadly, all of them. Maybe it will take you seeing members of your own family being killed by this Nazi regime before you realize that secession is a good idea. But by then it will be too late because they're clamping down on us. They'll just turn off your chip and you won't get to buy food if you talk about secession. The IPAB is an unelected panel, which will determine who gets treated and what age. Sebelius is serving as the director. Dave, you got another mistake here. I can't read the sentence. Let me try a who in here and see if that works. Sebelius, who is serving as the director, has been quoted as stating that the majority of IPAB membership cannot consist of medical practitioners. Oh, that's just great. This is like having Congress sign legislation without reading it. In other words, unqualified non-medical professionals will be making healthcare decisions which could determine your fate and the fate of your loved ones. Very good, Dave. You found the alarm, and I've read it, and I'm alarmed. At a time when many Americans have been angered by the abuses at the Internal Revenue Service, the NSA, National Security Agency, and the DOJ, Department of Justice, he calls it the Justice Department, the introduction of a powerful and largely unaccountable board into healthcare merits special scrutiny. It is important to note that the IPAB is accountable to nobody like the Federal Reserve, and we know what happened there. You know, all of these people must be accountable to the people. The people should have last say on all legislation, and we're only going to get that if we divorce the federal government like a bloated bitch who isn't nice anymore, and we don't want to be married to her anymore. It's time for her to hit the road. We'll do just fine. We, the people who live in the states, will survive because we make the money and the government has been taking it from us with a gun to our head. And what we need to do is remove the gun by secession. The IPAB is accountable to nobody, and Dave says smells like Sebelius is attempting to pull a fast one over on the American people, and this is only the tip of the iceberg. I agree, this is a Nazi regime. They intend to kill people, and this is the way they're intending to do it because they now have control of the media, the doctors, the morgue, and you're not going to hear about the murders. And if you do find out about them and you talk, they will silence you, and guess how they'll do it? Your medicines. 70% of America is on some kind of prescription drug. Another reprehensible element in the plethora of unaccountable dictatorial organizations which will ration our health care is the United States Preventive Services Task Force. United States Preventive Services Task Force. Well, I'm sick of the alphabet gangs who commit crimes against the people, and the crimes just keep getting bigger and bigger. This USPSTF, this is an unelected independent group of national experts in prevention and evidence-based medicine. The term treatment denied, because it has been declared to be experimental, will soon be a much more popular refrain from healthcare providers. Under national healthcare, the USPSTF will determine whether your doctor will be able to diagnose you with what diseases and what treatments are allowable and will be made available to you, as well as what age patients are still eligible for treatment. Everything the government has touched has turned to cow manure. Budgets that run way over any reasonable limit. Corruption throughout the entire system. And this idea that we can continue to concentrate power into the hands of the government, a handful of people, is crazy. We need to turn all this back into the local community. Divorce the federal government, be a state, and then break up the state into counties, and each county is its own country. We don't need a state income tax. We don't need a federal income tax on top of that. What we need is freedom to work and earn money and save it in our own accounts. And somebody should set up a way for us to save money in an account without the government involved. Everything is electronic today. It'd be very easy to transfer your paycheck directly into your account online. There's no cost for maintaining that account. Very, very little cost. And instead we're forced to do business with the banking system. This is insane. If the government was in charge of printing the money, and I'm not talking about the federal government, because that would be Congress, and we know that they're losers. They have a 10% approval rating. 90% of the people are not satisfied with Congress. So get rid of them. If you had an employee and he was 90% bad, would you keep him or would you get rid of him? You want employees that are 99% good, not 10% good. You would quickly fire them. Why can't we fire Congress? Because they've set up a system that we can't change. Well, we need to change it, and secession will allow us to change it. As I was saying, if local government had control of the currency printing presses instead of the Federal Reserve, they could create money, advance it to entrepreneurs to set up businesses and hire people, and this money is lent without interest. And when that money is paid back, it vanishes. It's taken out of circulation, like ripped up and thrown away. It's created in order to start a business. It helps the entrepreneur, and it helps the people he hires. It helps the whole society. And then it's taken away when it's paid back so it doesn't cause inflation. When the Federal Reserve charges interest to the federal government, the American people have to pay that interest. And where does it go? It goes right into the pockets of the parasitic bankers who own the private Federal Reserve. This is not only unearned money, it is the cause of inflation. And prices rise until old people can't buy medicine and food and still pay the rent. This is cruel, and the parasitic bankers at the Federal Reserve are to blame. We need to change this system. Now, Dave points out a very important point, another campaign promise that Obama broke, and we need to make those campaign promises contracts enforceable with personal liability for the clown that made them. We need to bring all of this promising the people to an end. He said, I will end the wars. It will be the first thing I do, and you can take that to the bank. And here we are 8 years later, and what did he do? Nothing. He increased the number of troops in Afghanistan. And then he rolled them back a little bit to one of his own previous levels, higher than the previous administration, and he calls that a rollback. The roll up gets no publicity. The roll back gets a lot of publicity, and we're all supposed to be fooled by this? No. I saw the chart. I saw it go up, 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 and then the number of troops came down a little bit, and that's the one that got all the attention in the press. Why? Because the press is under threat. We need to put an end to government threatening the press. That really stinks. The campaign promise went like this: rationing enrollment in ObamaCare for pre-existing conditions. Didn't Obama campaign on not permitting treatment to be denied based on pre-existing conditions? You bet he did, and like so many other things coming out of his mouth, he was lying about that too. A pre-existing condition health insurance program established by ObamaCare is already in financial trouble and seeking to control costs even before the program is unveiled. Even before the program is unveiled, it's running into financial trouble and seeking to control costs. The whole takeover of the industry screams exorbitant runaway costs, because everything the government has ever touched became the same thing: runaway costs. We get a bigger and bigger and bigger and more bloated government. And it's time to divorce this bitch. Cut her loose and let her find another man. Let Obama and his Congress and his administration, let them find some other 50 states to govern, because we don't like them. We don't want their governing, and we want a divorce. I do not believe in staying in a bad marriage. This marriage sucks. Next sentence: the Health and Human Services Department. Dave, your sentence structure is so poor I can't read this sentence. The Health and Human Services Department, there is... Okay, maybe it goes like this. The Health and Human Services Department, period. There is Sebelius rearing her ugly head again. Is she ugly? She can't be as ugly as Hillary Clinton. There is Sebelius rearing her ugly head again, has stopped enrolling any new people in the program according to an audit by the General Accounting Office, GAO. In addition, to further control spending, Sebelius has directed the program to shift more of the costs into the current participants. We are now witnessing just how free is ObamaCare, as the pre-existing conditions group is having its out-of-pocket costs increased even before the program commences. Rationing of health care is also occurring in 16 states, which have set a limit on the number of prescription drugs they will cover for Medicaid patients. 7 of those states, according to Kaiser Health News, have already enacted these limits in just the last 2 years in anticipation of the rollout of Obamacare. The bill should be Obama Doesn't Care, and then Dave says, death panels. It turns out that Palin was correct. There really are death panels who will possess the power of life and death. Those with chronic illnesses and the elderly will be the first set of victims. The IPAB has accurately been identified as a death panel because so many have called for it to have healthcare rationing powers, and because its decisions could result in cost-cutting measures that deny life-saving medical treatment. The IPAB will decide, for example, whether the 55-year-old cancer patient will get chemotherapy treatment, or will they be given a pain pill and sent home to die. Under Obama Doesn't Care, younger patients take precedent over older people. That's to save money on Social Security. After paying in for 45 years, they push the old people off a cliff and keep their Social Security benefits. These should have been privatized many years ago and left in your personal account. You contributed the money. It should have been invested by you. That money could have grown at 10% a year. Obama czar Cass Sunstein has said as much, that older people will be killed off when they give preference to younger patients. They like the younger patients because they can still pay the IRS. And that's what this is all about, slavery. Sunstein is also in favor of various eugenics policies through such unspeakable policies as embracing as policy post-birth abortions, that is, murder of defective children up to the age of 3. Boy, the Nazis would have loved this program. Then Dave says even the Nazis were not as inhumane as Sunstein. The Nazis were publicly forthcoming for their perceived need to ration health care when it came to what they called useless mouths. Henry Kissinger used the term useless eaters to describe those that should be done away with. They have no right to live under this draconian form of Fabian socialism. Well, I don't know what Fabian socialism is. Under Hitler, 300,000 people were exterminated in German hospitals through lethal injection. Under Obama's death care plan, this number will seem minuscule by comparison. So Dave Hodges is saying that Obama intends to murder people using the ObamaCare program. In recent remarks to the Accuracy in Media conference, quote, Obamanation, a day of truth, unquote, Betsy McAfee stated that the regulations and cuts in Obamacare would directly cause the deaths of 35,000 hospital patients who otherwise might have survived. Many think that this number might climb tenfold per year. So that's 350,000 a year, and Hitler only had 300,000 total. Instead of Obama comparing himself with FDR, who was a communist, a socialist, and did more destruction to the Constitution with 3,700 executive orders to his credit, Obama should be comparing himself with Adolf Hitler, because that's who he is most like. He wants the image of FDR because he's planning to take the gold, and that's why the price is falling. Somebody has tipped off somebody that the gold will be seized by government soon as a national emergency. They spent too much money, and now they have to take your gold, and they have to force you to buy treasuries with your 401ks. That's why we need to secede, to stop them from doing this. That's your money. They have no right to it. They're taking it as freely as they took the Social Security pension fund. So Betsy McAfee says that there will be 35,000 deaths caused directly by Obamacare, and that it could be 10 times that per year. And we are just beginning to learn about specific age-related exemptions for treatment. You see, there is the version of the law that Obama managed to get through both houses, which use very nebulous language. It's nebulous on purpose. Lawyers do this to hide the truth from the person who doesn't read the contract. Congress did not read this bill. It should be repealed on the basis of Congress did not read the bill. And some say they didn't have time to read the bill. This law should be repealed, and secession is the best way. Fire the federal government. Get rid of them. Illinois is the same size as Ecuador. If Ecuador can exist without an outside federal government, why can't Illinois? Instead, Illinois is supporting 37 military bases like they need them, and they're supporting the interest on the national debt, which costs Illinoisans about, I think it's $50-some million a day. A day. We need to get rid of the Federal Reserve, get rid of all totalitarian control over the states and the people, because slavery is the only thing you can expect, and death. So Dave says that Obama got this through both houses using very nebulous language. Then there's the administration of the same law and manifestation of these policies. All of it stinks to high heaven. We need to get rid of this law, get rid of this government, get rid of the entire Congress, get rid of all of the federal agencies, get rid of the IRS, get rid of the Federal Reserve, flush them all down the toilet with secession. And the second to the last paragraph reads, "And please remember that many doctors are leaving the profession because of this thinly veiled flavor of Obama-based eugenics." Well, the American Medical Association has always wanted a shortage of doctors in order to keep the pay at monopoly fees. And the American Bar Association has done the same thing with lawyers. I believe there could be doctors graduated in just 2 years, because Doc Holliday from 1871 had only 2 years of school. He had an associate's degree, effectively, and he became a doctor. I believe we could have some specialties that require only 2 years of training, and we could produce so many doctors that they would have to compete with each other to make a living, the way that everyone else has to compete. It's a totally unfair system. It's not fair that only a handful of people become doctors and they charge so much money, and it costs so much to go through 8 years of school, and lawyers the same way. They charge way too much. And all of their wealth is going to be taken from them in the end because it's just a totally corrupt system. Anybody who's living today in this society and does not have his eyes open enough to see that all your wealth is going to be taken from you, and your life as well. When you become a burden, they're not going to take care of you and respect you as they should because you gave your whole life to working hard and contributing. They're going to kill you off to get rid of you so they don't have to pay you anything, so they don't have to treat you anymore. It's far, far cheaper to just kill them off. And that's what they're doing. That's Nazi mentality. By 2020, the U.S. is projected to have a shortage of 80,000 doctors. By 2025, that's 5 years later, the number will almost double to a national shortage of 130,000 doctors. It will grow by 50,000. And with specialists and general practitioners being paid the same under ObamaCare, why would any doctor spend the extra money and time to become trained in various healthcare specialties if he's not going to make any more money? You've destroyed all the incentive. I'll tell you why he will study and go to school longer, because if he doesn't, his chip will be turned off and he won't be able to get food. They will control us with that chip, and that chip is mandatory under this ObamaCare program. It is mandatory that you have an RFID chip. And every time you go in for any kind of medical treatment, they're going to make sure that you have a chip under your arm. If you don't have one yet, they'll give you one. They won't even tell you. They will decide that it's not your right to know. So they've taken away all the incentive from the doctors, and specialties will not make any more money. And Dave writes, so even if Obamacare was not about creating treatment exclusions, finding a doctor and managing the wait time could prove to be an insurmountable challenge. Which means you're going to die. Which means your loved ones are going to die. You're not going to like this system any more than anyone else in the world has liked the socialist system that was implemented. Please, people, do something about secession. It's very simple. 50 states quit. The next day, they rejoin without the federal government. That's basically firing the federal government. No state moves from its present location. It remains right where it is. The 50 United States remain together, but without a federal government. So with the incentive to doctors gone, and finding a doctor will be an insurmountable challenge, Dave says this is only the tip of the iceberg, and yet the sheep continue to march on to their final resting place. Well, when 70% of the people opposed this bill, and then it became law anyway, that told you that government didn't care what you wanted. It was never about what you want. It was always about the orders Obama received from his Nazi rulers. They told him to push it through. They told Congress, you better push it through or you won't get your retirement. And that retirement is a bribe. It's a lavish retirement, but they won't get that either because they don't see what's coming. What's coming is totalitarian rule where everyone is a slave except one guy, and he is the one behind Obama who calls all the shots. The Enoch prophecies predicted that there would be one ruler and that he would declare himself God. And they made many, many predictions, and almost all of them have already come true. And the ones that I read that are in the future look very likely, like a war with Iran, Russia takes Iran and Turkey, and so on. I did videos about it. You can type in Enoch prophecies on my channel and pull up those prophecies. They're fascinating. But let me just tell you one last story about time travel. These little compartments of government had total control of time travel, and they went to the future. They sent a young man into the future. His name is Andrew Basiago. He went to the future and brought back all the records so that a handful of people know the future. They know what's happening. Well, it turns out that one person winds up dictator of the whole world, and he betrays everyone, and everyone becomes a slave under him. And so they went back and they killed his father to prevent him from ever existing. And you know what? It didn't matter. He exists today anyway, and they know who he is. And he's not Obama. Obama is a stooge. He's a puppet for this dictator. But all of you are going to be under the rule of this dictator if this is true. And since it's in the future, it's not true yet. I'm doing a video now on time travel and the Philadelphia experiment and Montauk, which is mind control. I've done part 1. Part 2 will be out soon. I would like you to look it up. Just type in time travel and look at the one that says the Philadelphia experiment, the Phoenix projects, and the Orion technology. That's the one to see. See you next time. Thanks for
This is why I'd rather do it by myself. Stack money, make music, put my product on the shelf. So many haters, man, it's hard to believe how they mad as fuck with an S like